Welcome to our video on simultaneous interpretation strategies in professional conference interpretation. We will delve into the world of simultaneous interpretation and explore the various strategies to ensure effective communication. Whether you are an interpreter or simply curious about the intricacies of interpretation, this video will provide valuable insights and knowledge. Get ready to discover the fascinating world of simultaneous interpretation strategies. Time to reflect on our interpretation production and decide what needs to change when we interpret a speech. Let's explore the strategy of compression. Compression is the process of condensing by preserving information which is essential for the present communicative tasks and putting aside the remaining part. The original meaning is rendered by the interpreter in a more general and concise way, usually with all repetitive, unimportant, or redundant information deleted or omitted. According to Chernov, compression in SI can take place at various levels of language, involving any one of the following: syllables, words, syntax, meaning or context. Syllabic compression. This compression mechanism takes place at the lowest level and involves the choice of words that have fewer syllables than the ones in the source language. Such a mechanism, according to Chernov, allows the interpreter to speak more slowly and comfortably than the original speaker. Lexical compression. The second type of compression implies the use of fewer words to express the same idea. It is rather doubtful that such an approach could actually reduce effort in interpreting. In fact, if anything, it may very well increase it. Syntactic compression. It implies the use of shorter or simpler constructions than the ones employed in the source language. It can be achieved, for example, by breaking a complex sentence into several simpler ones, a technique commonly adopted in SI and known as saucissonnage in French, or salami technique in English. Syntactic compression results from the choice of a shorter and simpler construction than that used in the original by using the following. 1. Breaking a complex sentence with involved clause structure into several simple sentences. 2. Substituting a prepositional phrase for a participial construction. 3. Substituting a single word for a word combination, or an abbreviation or the full name of a country or an organization. The United Nations equals ONU, in Italian or French. Semantic compression. Semantic compression has many points in common with lexical compression and is such as open to the same criticism. As a matter of fact, the very example provided by Chernov is rather debatable. The French expression, traité de non-prolifération des armes nucléaires, interpreted into English with non-proliferation treaty. Although it certainly cannot be denied that the English translation is semantically more concise than the French one, this example seems to point to an imprecise interpretation rather than to a successful example of semantic compression. In fact, although the shorter English expression, non-proliferation treaty, may be acceptable in informal contexts, the unabridged form is certainly preferable in more formal ones, as shown in the United Nations website, where reference is always made to the complete expression, Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, and never to the less formal and more vague, Non-Proliferation Treaty. However, if the interpreter is lagging behind and the speaker is fast, the interpreter can interpret Non-Proliferation Treaty, and the listeners will have to infer that he is referring to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Situational compression. Situational compression refers to the elimination of speech chunks bearing information which is compensated for by the extralinguistic situation of the communication. Being a strategy that involves context, it could well be the most flexible compression strategy. The following example, taken from the minutes of a UN meeting, has often been quoted as a typical example of situational compression. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate of the Republic of Argentina, rendered in the target language by the interpreter just with the word, Argentina. Here the interpreter probably felt that most of the situational information in the utterance could be omitted, given that the delegates attending the meeting were likely to know that 1. Argentina was represented by a delegate, that 2. It is a republic, 3. That all delegates are distinguished, and that 4. The floor was being given by the chairperson, in that 5. moment, now. It was therefore up to the listeners to reconstruct the situational pieces of information that had been left out by the interpreter, according to a process that Seleskovich calls the principle of non-imbecility of listeners. In the example above, the interpreter was probably aware that the main communicative task was just passing the floor, and that it had to be accomplished as quickly as possible to free the channel and allow a colleague with a different language pair to step in. A complete translation could have possibly required too much time and covering part of the speech delivered by the delegate from Argentina. If the interpreter had not compressed the message and freed the channel as soon as possible, very important pieces of information, such as a vote for example, could have been lost. In other words, although compression in SI may decrease the burden on short-term memory by reducing the size of a message, it involves an extra processing effort to compress it, which may well not pay off. The compressed message, furthermore, would increase the processing burden on listeners who would have to decode it. Compression is a difficult strategy that involves extra processing effort, and it may be hard to acquire in the advanced levels of interpretation training. However, once an interpreter realizes how to use the compression strategy, the interpretation will be more straightforward, concise, and the message will be conveyed clearly even at fast-paced speeches.